A year after moving to Australia, I almost convinced myself I needed to leave. Not because I wasn't happy and I didn't want to go back to France either, but something started to feel different. When I first moved here, everything felt different. I started working on a ranch around horses and all sorts of animals, and I was pretty happy because that was the life I was chasing. I was living with an Australian family and discovering a completely new life. But slowly, that feeling disappeared. At some point, I got a more normal job, I settled into a new routine, and life became predictable again. I started wondering if I'd made a mistake. Maybe Australia wasn't for me after all. Maybe I needed a fresh new start again. Another country, another adventure. Asia, maybe. But looking back now, I know that I didn't want a new life. I think I was struggling with something much harder, the fact that I was changing. And so I started realizing something. Starting over can become deeply addictive because every time life becomes uncomfortable, every time we're forced to grow into a new version of ourselves, it's easier to believe that the problem is where we are. I found that it's much harder to stay somewhere and accept that we're changing and becoming something else. So in this video, I want to talk about why starting over can become really addictive and how I almost left Australia because of it, and what I finally learned when I stopped running from who I was becoming. Hi, I'm Mary. I left France for Australia, and this channel is where I document everything I've learned about starting a new life on the other side of the world. So today, I'm asking you this question. What if the urge to start over isn't actually about the place you're in? What if it's about the person you're actually becoming? I've always been someone who loves change. You can ask everyone that knows me, they will all have the same answer. Mary needs change, she needs adventure, she can't stay in one place. So when I left France for Australia, I was chasing a new life for myself. I'm not going to lie. For a while, it felt really incredible because when you say something and you actually do it, you're like, whoa, I can actually become anything I want in this life. Obviously, if you do have a little bit of money on the side, if you work towards a goal, but the day you finally jump on that plane, the day you finally open a business, the day you finally put into motion a project that you've been thinking about for a long time, trust me, it feels really good. So I arrived in Australia, everything was brand new landscapes, new people, new culture, new possibilities. And my life started finally feeling like a story worth telling. I was so proud to just finally be with myself on the other side of the world, to have to rely only on myself. I was doing my dream job, I was working with horses, I grew up with horses, so I was really lucky to find that kind of job. I was surrounded by really nice people that I felt really aligned with. I was working in nature, inside a beautiful rainforest. My apartment was just on a creek. So every day I would hear the water running. The grass, for once, was actually greener somewhere else. But after a little bit over a year, things started to change. Australia hadn't changed, but I had. Or what I think happened is, after the feeling of excitement that I felt, I was back at questioning what I really wanted from life and who I wanted to become and who I really was. So the excitement started fading. My life became more stable and ordinary again. Even though the landscape didn't change, it was still better to live that ordinary life in Australia than in France, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I didn't feel that everyday excitement for life and deep sense of adventure that I felt when I first arrived, and that it's completely normal and it was meant to happen. So obviously I started wondering, oh, what if there's another country somewhere for me? What if I already outgrown this place too? At first I thought that all these thoughts meant that I was unhappy. Now, looking back, I think they meant something else. I think I was really anxious because I was standing at the edge of a new version of myself, even though I don't like to use that expression, but that's the best way I can describe it. I knew that to feel comfortable again, I had to change something within myself and not in my environment. Australia was actually the perfect environment for me to heal from friends friends, heal from all the various traumas that we all have, I found peace with the nature in Australia. And that's one thing for sure.
For sure.
So that would mean something was wrong within myself. I was resisting a change. Becoming that new person felt incredibly uncomfortable. And so that part of me wanted to run because that's the thing I was most successful at. I was just running from pain because starting over gives us something really seductive. It allows us to stay in motion. And when you stay in motion, you don't think about all the bad shit that's happening in your life or in your mind. So as long as you're moving, you're never really stopping and asking yourself the right questions. I had to sit with myself and my feelings in a brand new country without my support system, and I had to ask myself the real questions. And this time I couldn't use the excuse of my home country not feeling like home anymore. Now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm glad I didn't leave. Staying forced me to confront something I avoided for years, and I had to figure that shit all alone without my loved ones and very far away from home. What I learned is that growth doesn't feel always exciting. Sometimes growth feels boring and it feels uncertain. Sometimes it feels like losing a version of yourself that was protecting you in the past. But on the other side of that discomfort is understanding who you really are and just letting go of that mask. If I had left Australia, the moment things stopped feeling exciting, I would have just learned how to start over again. And instead, I learned how to stay and build new foundations. I think the gift for me is that it taught me how to not run every time life asked me to change. It's a real challenge to stay somewhere when life doesn't really feel exciting anymore. But I think that's where you and I meet the version of ourselves that was waiting underneath all along. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.